Hello, this is Aaron West. I am the author of the A24 New Wave. In this book, I look at A24's output and I make the argument that we are in a new wave movement right now. A24 plays a major role. This book has a supplemental podcast where each episode is a brief conversation about an A24 related topic, whether an actor, director, or even a genre. As I continue research for the book and conduct interviews, I expect to record podcast episodes with people involved with the company. You can find the podcast at cinejourneys.com or wherever you find podcasts, and we are proud to be members of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
Weirding Way Media.
If you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance you're as obsessed with music as I am. But what was your first musical infatuation? What was the first artist that made you cross that line between passive music consumer to, I must know everything about this artist, I must hear everything they've done? I can trace my primary musical preoccupation to high school, sophomore year to be exact. Sure, I owned and loved plenty of music up to that point, but one artist in particular became a singular obsession for me. It was a perfect storm of right place, right time, and I'd like to share it with you in this episode. Tonight, let me introduce you, again, to David Bowie. Hello listeners to another episode of Noise Junkies. I'm HP. This episode I'll be delving into my own formative history with the music of the one and only David Bowie. This is not the first time Bowie has come up on the Noise Junkies podcast. Way back during the first iteration of this podcast, Noise Junkies Mark I, episode 8 centered around David Bowie. But I felt the time was right to dive back into this topic, putting a different spin on it with a deeper dive into my personal history with his music. This will not be a chronological history of Bowie or his career. Those roads have been well traveled, and many other presenters have covered it better than I ever could. I'll be discussing some of my own personal signposts with Bowie's catalog, highlighting a few lesser-known songs that have become some of my favorites over the years. I can't recall a time when I wasn't aware of Bowie in one way or another. The 1983 album Let's Dance was a monster hit and was omnipresent on the radio and MTV. And who could forget Bowie's turn as the Goblin King Jareth in the 1986 cult classic Labyrinth? It's not as if I didn't enjoy all of that, but I hadn't yet reached that point where my pastimes became passions. Like many others, I'm sure, it wasn't until high school that my musical passions helped to define my identity. It was that wonderful, confusing time when we're all figuring out who we are, and there was something almost tribal in self-identifying as a fan of this or that artist. It's a special time when everything means so much, and an artist's identity helps to define ours, in a way. Right when I was smack in the middle of this period, 1989 to be exact, a tiny record label called Rykodisc, incidentally headquartered in Salem, Mass., just one town away from where I grew up, accomplished the seemingly impossible in acquiring the rights to David Bowie's pre-1983 back catalog. By 1989, CDs were quickly becoming the standard in physical music media, yet Bowie's early catalog was not yet available in this format. Some of those albums had been briefly issued on CD in 1985, but they were quickly pulled due to being remastered without Bowie's consent. Rykodisc, founded in 1983 by entrepreneur Don Rose, was the world's first CD-only label. Their name was derived from the Japanese word Raiko, which means sound from a flash of light. They started making waves in the industry when they managed to snag Frank Zappa and Jimi Hendrix's back catalog rights. And after 2 years of negotiation, the North American rights to Bowie's pre-1983 albums were given to Rykodisc. For a budding young music completist like me, this was a great time to be a CD collector. Music labels were starting to put more thought and care in how artists' back catalog was treated. You started to see more and more remastering of legacy music owing to the increased fidelity of compact discs, as well as the advent of bonus tracks. For someone like me, given to rabidly collecting whatever I was passionate about, this just fed that compulsion. Never mind the fact that in many cases, unreleased material was unreleased for a reason. The notion of finding a diamond in the rough was so exciting to me. Rykodisc took this approach with Bowie's albums and ran with it. The first official Bowie release on Rykodisc was the box set Sound and Vision, released in 1989. I vividly recall picking up both this and De La Soul's debut album 3 Feet High and Rising at Sam Goody at my local mall one day. Anyone remember Sam Goody? Goody got it?
Goody, 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 goody got it, goody got it. Sam Goody got it, Sam Goody got it, Sam Goody, Sam Goody got it.
We've got it. Summer savings at Sam Goody. Pick up Theater of Pain from Motley Crue, Invasion of Your Privacy, new from Rat, and Shaken and Stirred by Robert Plant. On sale now, only $6.99 each. Store-wide summer savings at Sam Goody.
Goody, goody, Sam Goody got it, goody, goody. Sam Goody got it, Sam Goody got it.
Sam Goody. Got it.
By now, CDs were becoming a big deal for music connoisseurs. The template for the retrospective box set, replete with greatest hits and bonus tracks, was already established by Bob Dylan's Biograph box, as well as Eric Clapton's Crossroads box set. Although Sound and Vision was originally conceived as a career retrospective in this vein, the final product leaned heavily on alternate versions, demos, and the like. So not only was this a nice advanced look at the newly remastered music, but it also offered much for Bowie obsessives to pore over. As I had no real conception of Bowie's music prior to Let's Dance, the non-album tracks held as much weight to me as the rest. Take this cover of Bruce Springsteen's It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City, recorded during the Diamond Dogs sessions. Bowie takes Springsteen's pseudo-Dylan-esque cameo of tough guy tropes and makes it his own. Sure, Springsteen's leather jacket might have been somewhat ill-fitting on Bowie, but the song does manage a certain cinematic feel, and its coked-up energy pushes things along nicely.
It's skin like leather, and the diamond hard loop of a cobra. I was born blue and weathered, I burst just like a supernova. I could walk like Brando right into the sun, and dance just like a Casanova. With my blackjack and jacket and my hair slick sweet, silver studs on the duds just like a Harley and Heat. When I strut down the street, I could hear its heartbeat. The sisters fell back and said, "Don't that man look pretty?" The cripple on the corner cried out, "Hey, nickels for your pity." Them gasoline boys downtown, they sure talk gritty. It's so hard to be a saint in the city.
Elsewhere was the song Round and Round, a cover of the Chuck Berry tune Around and Round. Recorded during the Ziggy Stardust sessions, it's a really fun track, but it's easy to see why it was left off of that album in favor of the song Starman. Starman helped further the Ziggy Stardust story along, whereas Round and Round is a stomping rock number featuring the razor-sharp guitar work of Mick Ronson. The band sounds like they're having a blast on this one.
When the joint was rocking, going round and round. Yeah, reeling and rocking. What a crazy sound. Well, they never stopped rocking till the moon went down. Well, the sound is so sweet. Had to take me a chance. I rose out of the seat and I had to dance. Started moving my feet.
From January 1990 through August 1992, Rykodisc released all 14 of Bowie's pre-1983 albums. They were released in chronological order, usually one or two at a time, every couple of months or so. I would eagerly await each new release and run out to the store when it came out. And pretty much every release would feature a few bonus tracks covering that album's time period. Take, for example, the oddball version of Moon Age Daydream credited to Arnold Corns that appeared on The Man Who Sold the World. Arnold Corns was a kind of proto-Ziggy Stardust band featuring future Spiders from Mars Mick Ronson on guitar, Mick Woody Woodmansey on drums, and Trevor Bolder on bass. Most curiously, it also featured Freddie Beretti, a 19-year-old designer who would go on to create a number of Bowie's striking Ziggy Stardust costumes. Beretti was credited as the singer, but that was a fabrication. It's actually Bowie on vocals. Anyway, this would-be side project had two songs on this reissue, Moon Age Daydream and Hang On to Yourself. Both would feature on the forthcoming Ziggy Stardust album, but here they are presented in radically different versions.
Come on, strong girl, and lay a heavy trick on me. The church of my love is such a holy place to be. Make me, baby, make me know you really care. Make me jump into the air. Keep your electric eye on me, babe. Put your ring gun to my head. Press your space close to mine, love. Freak out in a moon age daydream, oh yeah. Right on. Come on, you mothers. Far out.
Diamond Dogs featured a few demos recorded during the album's original conception. You see, Bowie's original intention was to adapt George Orwell's novel 1984 as a concept album. But Orwell's widow refused to allow the use of the novel, so Bowie had to scramble to salvage what he could from the songs he had already written. Listening to Diamond Dogs, you can definitely see the seams of what was originally 1984 and what came after. I've no idea where or how Candidate would have fit into the original narrative, or if it was really even inspired by 1984, but I love the slinky groove, which in some ways presages the pivot to soul music Bowie would take with the Young Americans album.
glance at window panes and look pleased with myself and look pleased with myself. Yeah, and pretend I'm walking home.
The larger reissue included a 1988 re-recording of the track Look Back in Anger. The 1979 original was a favorite of mine, especially memorable for its creepy-as-hell music video. The video was directed by David Mallet, a hugely prominent music video director from that time period. In addition to directing several for Bowie, he directed videos for the likes of Blondie, Peter Gabriel, Billy Idol, Def Leppard, and of course, Haircut 100. This was a point in which music videos were moving away from straight performance clips into more creative, film-like narratives. The video for Look Back in Anger was inspired by the picture of Dorian Gray. Bowie plays an artist in his studio who has painted an angelic self-portrait. As he runs his hand over the painting, his face begins to scar and distort, leaving half of his face looking scarred and awful. Another fun fact, I was 6 years old when I saw this video.
You know who I am, he said. The speaker was an angel. He coughed and shook his crumpled wings, closed his eyes and moved his lips. This time we should be going. Waiting so long, I've been waiting, so waiting. Look back in anger, driven by the night till you come. Waiting so long, I've been waiting, so waiting. Look back in anger, see it in my eyes till you come. No one seemed to hear him, so he leaped for a magazine and yawning rubbed the sleep away. And very sane he seemed to me. So long, I've been waiting, so waiting. Look back in anger, driven by the night till you come.
The 1988 remake of Look Back in Anger was recorded as part of a collaborative performance with the Quebecois dance troupe La 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 Human Steps. It featured lead guitar by Reeves Gabrels, who would soon join Bowie for his Tin Machine side project. This version of the song is more menacing, with Gabrels' lead guitar quoting Carlos Alomar's original solo, but giving it more bite. I adored all of the Rykodisc reissues. They sounded great, had lots of wonderful bonus tracks, and thanks to the staggered release schedule, I was able to consume the music without binging too fast. In aiding in my Bowie musical education, I must give a shout out to my brother-in-arms, my partner in podcasting, most importantly, my best friend, Father Malone. I'll never forget, just after I started gobbling up these albums one after the other, Father Malone drove up to my house bearing a gift. It was the book David Bowie, an illustrated record by Roy Carr and Charles Shaar Murray. Father Malone drove all the way to my place just to gift me this book that he knew I would cherish. And I did, and I still do. It's still there in my bookcase all these years later. To all you listeners, if you have a friend like Father Malone, well, consider yourself a lucky motherfucker indeed. The book covered all of Bowie's solo albums as of its year of publication, 1981, basically starting with Space Oddity and ending with Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. Exactly the period of these Rykodisc reissues, so it was perfect for me. It was the same dimensions as a record album, with gorgeous color photos of each album cover and plenty of other great pictures throughout. Each album had a dedicated section in the book with personnel and song info, even the author's review of each record. I pored over this book, gleaning every bit of information that I could on my newfound musical obsession. Remember, folks, this was pre-internet, so it wasn't like I could just pull up the AllMusic guide or Discogs to learn about the albums and stories behind them. This was the resource for me. So thanks again, brother. In 1998, Island Records co-founder Chris Blackwell bought Rykodisc for a reported $35 million. A year later, the office in Salem, Mass. Was closed, with much of the staff laid off. The label would relocate to New York, and by 2009, the Ryko Corporation would cease to exist, having been acquired and sold several times over the ensuing years. The global publishing rights to Bowie's music would eventually be sold to Warner Chappell Music in 2022 for a reported $250 million. His albums have been reissued several times since those Rykodisc releases. But for me, they never had the same charm, the same spark, the same care and attention that Rykodisc so clearly gave to them. I want to finish up by talking about a Bowie song that came after the Rykodisc reissue campaign, and one that I discovered long after my first brush with Bowie mania. Following Bowie's death in 2016, I dove back into his music, as many people do following an artist's death, catching up with some songs that I had missed the first time through. The song that made the biggest impact on me was Everyone Says Hi, off of 2002's Heathen. I wasn't the biggest fan of Bowie's early 2000s output. His shift to a more electronic sound didn't really resonate with me at the time, and I was content to stick with the parts of his catalog I'd grown up with. I first heard Everyone Says Hi way back in 2003 when playing the PS2 video game Amplitude. Amplitude was a rhythm game produced by the game studio Harmonix, who would later go on to make the immensely popular Guitar Hero and Rock Band games. Remember those little plastic instruments, how omnipresent they were back then? I know I had them. Well, Amplitude was one of the seeds that led to that fad. Everyone Says Hi was a song that appeared on the Amplitude soundtrack, but in a more house music style remix.
Everyone says hi. Everyone says hi. Said you sailed a big ship. Said you sailed away. Didn't know the right thing to say. I'd love to get a letter. Like to know what's what. Hope the weather's good and it's not too hot for you. Everyone says hi. Everyone says hi.
I played the shit out of Amplitude, but didn't really take much note of this song. Probably because I was too busy focusing on the gameplay to really listen closely to it. Cut to 13 years later, and there I am, finally listening to the original version. Bowie's death hit me pretty hard, at least as much as the death of a famous person that I've never met could affect me. I found myself listening more intently to Everyone Says Hi, really listening to the lyrics, and it hit me like the proverbial ton of bricks. Everyone Says Hi may be one of the saddest songs in Bowie's catalog. On the surface, the song's narrator is reaching out to someone, a loved one, who has taken a long trip to someplace far away. The narrator misses them terribly and worries that this traveler won't be happy in their new environment. Bowie entreats them to come back home if they're unhappy, and the refrain of Everyone Says Hi keeps repeating throughout, conveying the notion that there are other people back home who share their concern. Seems simple enough, right? But Bowie himself has gone on record as saying the song is about the death of his father, Haywood Stanton Jones, in 1969. In The Complete David Bowie by Nicholas Pegg, Bowie is quoted as saying, "When my father died in 1969, I couldn't actually believe that he was not going to come back again. I kind of thought that he'd just put his raincoat and his cap on and that he'd be back in a few weeks or something. And I felt like that for years. It really took a long time for me to be able to take in the fact that I wouldn't see him again." So this one was just a little simplistic reference to that, about how it always feels like somebody has gone on a holiday of some kind. I think that sentiment is immediately relatable for anyone who has lost a cherished loved one. The sudden shock of loss is so unthinkable, you almost fool yourself into believing they'll walk into the room at any moment, like nothing had happened. I lost my own father in 2007, which connected me to the lyrics in a way that I wasn't prepared for. The song made plain how I felt in the wake of my father's passing, and it was almost like I'd started mourning him all over again. It's a simple lyric, nothing grand or difficult to parse, an ordinary theme of loss and missing someone you love dearly. It's all couched in a bouncy, electronic-tinged tune that doesn't quite betray the song's true sentiment. But it's not a sad, depressing track either. Bowie manages to inject some bits of humor into the song, like the doo-wop-style backing vocals during the middle eight. And the lyrics manage some darkly funny touches as well, particularly the inclusion of the big fat dog that Bowie sings about in the song's closing fade-out. Still, even now, years removed from my rediscovery of the track, I can't listen to it without thinking of my father and getting emotional all over again.
Said you took a big trip. They said you moved away. Happened oh so quietly, they say. Shoulda took a picture, something I could keep. Buy a little frame, something cheap for you. Everyone says hi. Said you sailed a big ship. Said you sailed away. Didn't know the right thing to say. I'd love to get a letter, like to know what's what. Hope the weather's good and it's not too hot for you. Everyone says hi. Everyone says hi. Everyone says don't stay in a sad place where they don't care money is lousy, you can always come home. We can do the old things, we can do all the bad things. If the food gets you leery, you can always phone. We could do all the good things. We could do it, we could do it, we could do it. Don't stay in a bad place where they don't care how you are. Everyone says hi. Everyone says hi. Everyone says hi. And the girl next door, and the guy upstairs. Everyone says hi. And your mom and dad. Everyone says hi. And your big fat dog. Everyone says hi.
That's it for this episode of Noise Junkies. Thank you for indulging me once again. When I'm not listening to music, you can find me elsewhere on the Weirding Way Network. I co-host the Night Mr. Walters A Taxi podcast alongside Midnight Viewing's Father Malone, and I'm an occasional guest on the Culture Cast with Chris Dashew. And I have a Bandcamp site, hpmusicplace.bandcamp.com. I've just released a new album called Wired and Waiting. Please check it out. As always, please feel free to write us, rate us, review us. We'd love to hear from you in any manner you choose. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again next time.